Hello and welcome everyone to the Varsity Tutors StarCourse series, where, as we've been reminded over the last week, American soldiers are constantly making heroic efforts to better Americans and better the world. And one of the ways we remember those soldiers is with the Purple Heart. August is Purple Heart Day month. We just celebrated that, remembered that a couple weeks ago, and that's why we're thrilled to have our friends from Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall Museum in Pittsburgh here to tell us all about the history and traditions around the Purple Heart. We've got Tim Neff and Michael Kraus from Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall here to introduce us to the Purple Heart and tell us some of the stories from their collection of Purple Heart recipients and what that recognition has meant to them. Now, if you've been to some of these classes with us before, you know that we want to keep it really interactive. And so make sure you notice the chat box to the right of the screen here. I think it says ask on it. You can actually ask and answer in there. Tim and Mike are going to ask you guys some questions to find out what you know about the Purple Heart, what you think about the Purple Heart. And coming up soon, we'll play a game of fact or fiction to really test your knowledge. Some things we'll cover in class, some things you may have to know. We'll play some fact or fiction there. Also use that area to ask them questions. In the last 10 minutes or so, I'm going to interview them with your questions so we can get as many of them as possible answered. So throughout the class, answer their questions there. Ask questions if you have them. And then the other thing is make sure you've got a camera nearby. And in about 30 minutes, we're going to give everyone an opportunity to lean into the screen, take a picture with the Purple Heart so you can commemorate your attendance here. If you upload that to Instagram and tag Soldiers and Sailors and Varsity Tutors, you'll be entered to win a swag bag from Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall Museum and 1 free month subscription to BT Plus. We'll have some links on the screen for you to learn more about those things. But with all that said, I want to turn it over to our hosts for today, your teachers, Tim Neff and Michael Kraus from Soldiers and Sailors. Hey, guys.
Hey, thank you so much, Brian. My name is Tim Neff. I'm the Director of Museum and Education here at Soldiers and Sailors. And with me, as always, is
Michael Kraus. I'm the curator here at Soldiers and Sailors Museum.
And we're so happy that you're again joining us this evening. And as we said, we're going to be talking about the Purple Heart. We did recognize Purple Heart Day earlier this month, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I do believe the Purple Heart is probably the most well-known military decoration. Most people, when they come to our museum, it's one they ask about all the time, or they oftentimes have a relative that received a Purple Heart. So that's why we thought it might be interesting to dive into its history, really find out what it means and what it represents. And as Brian said, we'll also be playing a game at the end to test everybody's knowledge. To begin with, let's look at today's agenda. We will start with an overview of the Purple Heart, its history, how it got started, and how it got to where it is today. Then we'll look at some of the stories from our collection with some of the artifacts that we have and some of the individuals that received the award. Then we'll play our game of fact or fiction, test your knowledge. And then we'll end up with a little bit of information about where we are right now at Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So once again, thank you all for joining us, and we'll dive right into the introduction here. Let's start with a question. Let's get everybody involved here, and let's see, have you ever heard of the Purple Heart? Give everybody a chance here. I'm guessing there'll be a lot of yeses to this one because, like I said, it is so well known. It does get talked about very often, and I'm seeing a lot of that coming through here. I'm not seeing too many people, or at least they're not admitting that they don't know what the Purple Heart is. And if you don't know what it is, that's okay. That's what we're here for. Yeah. And we're glad that you're joining us. All right. So wonderful. I do see the majority of people, though, for sure have heard of it. And that's what we were kind of expecting. And I think if you've heard of it, though, not everybody always understands the whole story behind it. So that's really what we want to jump into. And let's start with the history here. The Purple Heart traces its roots all the way back to the American Revolution. Now, when I say its roots, it wasn't the Purple Heart, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but the very origins of this can be traced back to George Washington during the American Revolution, where on August 7th, 1782, he wanted to have some way to recognize individual soldiers who had shown merit above and beyond the call of duty. I don't think he used those words, but kind of the same concept of recognizing these individual soldiers that had done some very impressive things. It was meant for privates and non-commissioned officers, and he really is the one that got it started. And for that reason, through that lineage, the Purple Heart is considered the oldest medal in the American U.S. military, and one of the oldest in all militaries from what I was reading just a little bit before the class. But if we go to the next one here, we'll see an image of what they called the Badge of Military Merit. And right away, you see the connection to the Purple Heart because it was shaped.
Yeah, it's a Purple Heart.
Yeah, just like a
It
Purple
is.
Heart there.
Mhm.
And am I correct here? The one on our left here is,
That's an original example. There were only 3 known, 3 awarded, and this is the only one that's known. I actually don't know where it is. I would assume it's Smithsonian or somewhere. And the one on the right is a more modern copy, pretty faithful, but we use it in our discussions of Purple Heart in the origin.
right. So that's, just how it really got started, but then it went dormant for some years and really wasn't used. And that even that name, badge of military merit, of course, the Purple Heart name didn't even exist yet. We go through the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, World War I, and it's not being used. And it really wasn't until after World War I that discussion started to talk about bringing it back.
That's right.
And one of the leading forces with that was somebody that a lot of people have heard of, and that was Douglas MacArthur. And he wasn't the first one to really pick up the mantle, but he really took it home and brought it all the way through to the point where on February 22nd, 1932, which just happened to also be the 200th anniversary of Washington's birthday, they reinstated what we would call today the modern Purple Heart. And the imagery that we're very familiar with, which we'll see here in a minute. But they had to have it designed. They had to come up with all the criteria for it. And they went through this pretty long process of establishing, the Purple Heart as we know it, as I said today. Right next to Douglas MacArthur here, you also see the Washington coat of arms. And I want you to take note of that because we'll see that come up in the design of the medal. And we'll see that kind of displayed on there. So if we look at the modern medal here, what we'll see is a bust of George Washington, once again, tracing it back to those origins of the badge of military merit. Right above that is his seal that we just saw on the last slide. And of course, just the simple imagery of a heart, a Purple Heart. And that's what it has been known as ever since then. And has, like I said, become probably the most well-known medal that we have in the U.S. military. When it was started, I want to let Michael talk a little bit about, kind of what the original, how it came after World War I, but I think some guys in World War I were eligible for it, so it was a retroactive situation. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Well, it was a badge. MacArthur saw it as a badge of military merit. There was no connection to what we know it for today as an award for somebody who was killed or wounded in combat. And in fact, in World War I, if you were wounded in combat, you received a stripe on your sleeve. On the left sleeve, there'd be an upside down chevron. It's a V-shaped stripe. And we'll see an example of that later. And you also got a certificate, which we'll see later as well. But in the 1930s, when MacArthur came up with this idea, it was thought that it should be awarded to soldiers who had fought in France and had been wounded, not killed, but wounded. And it became retroactive. So soldiers who could prove that they had been wounded or had been issued a wound stripe, they were now eligible for a Purple Heart medal. And many of those were issued to them at that time.
And there was a process where you basically just applied for it. So not every single one that was wounded received it, or it was more of a process that you had to have that chevron and go through the process to request the medal.
It had to be vetted, and there were certain criteria that, it wasn't just a scratch you received shaving if you were in the trenches. It had to be caused by enemy action, and we'll talk about those criteria.
And speaking of that, I think that will bring us to some of our basic criteria that were established here. And these are, pretty much not all the criteria. This is just the simplest form of, kind of what you have to do in order to, earn or receive the medal. And it starts with, very important. It starts with any action against an enemy of the United States. You have to remember that, against an enemy. That's a very big part of this. It's not, something that you do back home, or you can get
training camp.
You can get injured a lot of different ways in the military, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in this case, in order to be eligible for the Purple Heart, this must come in action against the enemy. Any action with an opposing armed force or foreign country in which the armed forces of the United States are or have been engaged. So that one's kind of looking at a situation where maybe you're not directly serving, under the United States Army. You might be assisting another army or doing something like that. Am I correct? That, then you might find yourself wounded or injured and eligible that way.
the next one kind of covers that same thing.
Right. While serving with friendly foreign forces engaged in armed conflict against an opposing armed force in which the United States is not a belligerent party. Very wordy way basically to say that even though we might not be involved, we might have advisors in a situation. I think this is particularly true around the Vietnam War.
Yeah, very classic situation.
Right. Before we're really, declaring war or even going to war, we are sending advisors to help the South Vietnamese army, and they are, eligible if they are wounded for the Purple Heart. As a result of an act of any such enemy or opposing armed forces, or as a result of any act or any hostile foreign force. So you can see, there's just this basic theme behind all of this is, there has to be an enemy involved, and the wound has to be the direct result of that engagement with the enemy.
In action somehow.
Right. As opposed to, we have a couple of examples here of things that do not qualify. And we found these kind of interesting when we were going through and talking about
they were contested. It was actually brought up that these should be worthy of it and denied.
Right. I mean, a good example is that first one, trench foot. That's a situation where, you're on the front lines, you probably almost consider yourself daily engaged with the enemy, but it is something that, is a terrible. I don't even know exactly. Can you explain?
It's when your feet are actually kind of rotting, because they're wet. You can't change your boots, and you get a infection, your skin. I won't go into the details, but it's not
bad.
A pleasant thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So very serious, and could cost you, your foot maybe in the long run through an infection, or even, in your life maybe. But in this case, along with some of these other things, frostbite, heat stroke, food poisoning, accidental self-inflicted wounds. And I think an interesting moving forward, when we had a discussion about this ourselves, is, PTSD, and where does that fit into all of this?
Yeah, it's it's a new field identifying PTSD, and certainly a lot of people suffer from that. But is it caused inaction?
Right.
There's a lot of parameters, and on our discussion, we thought that over time there may be some concessions for certain types of PTSD
as we get better at understanding PTSD, and I don't want to use this word, even it's the only word, like labeling different aspects to it, and
identifying markers.
Good one. Identifying markers. We could see that coming around, but at this point, it's really physical wounds in the face of the enemy, who engaged against the enemy. That hasn't really changed much through the years. But you did mention, I think it is important to point here, in World War I, it was not for people killed in action.
That's right.
But that has changed, right?
Yeah, in World War I, it was not killed in action. In fact, families who had killed in action got a certificate, and we'll show that later too. It became people became eligible for a Purple Heart who were killed after Pearl Harbor, and that was the line that was crossed that said killed or wounded would receive the medal.
So shortly, we're talking about the medal in 1932. By 1941, that shift is taking place after Pearl Harbor, 1942, really, it includes those that are killed.
It's not being given for military merit anymore either.
Now it is really completely shifted, even though, as we said, it traces its roots. The criteria has shifted away from just for merit. Another interesting one that came up were prisoners of war, and that's one that it was not always awarded for, and that doesn't come till later on.
1974.
So the prisoners of war, and then one other one are civilians that are wounded in military action, and what did we find out about that? I mean, some of that was kind of related to, are you a contractor or under, the employment of the military?
It has to be in conjunction with military.
Right. And it's pretty rare, but there are examples of it. And it has occurred, and it's only in situations where these civilians are working directly with or under the military at the time of their wound or at the time that they are killed. So it's had a bit of I don't want to say complicated, but it has a history to it and has changed through the years. And I think it's important to understand that, but I think now we really have established, a pretty clear criteria, with maybe PTSD being one of the last hurdles to get over to really come up with that, identify and define the situation. So with all that said, and we have mentioned this earlier this month, August 7th was Purple Heart Day. And August 7th does take us back once again to the Badge of Military Merit. If you remember, August 7th, 1782 is when the Washington introduced the badge. So that's where that August 7th comes from. And each year we take a moment to recognize Purple Heart Day. And of course, we're a couple weeks late, but once again, that is why we decided to do this class this month here. And we have, I think, a question while we end up section 1 here. And the question is, do you know anyone who received a Purple Heart? So I'm guessing a lot of people may know them, especially those that at least knew what the medal was. I know that's one of the reasons it comes up so often. I get the question of, my uncle received the Purple Heart, because a lot of times we might be talking about other medals and explaining their significance while on a tour or something like that. And it inevitably somebody's going to ask about the Purple Heart.
But immediately when somebody says that, you know that person was in combat.
Yeah. Right. And I'm seeing a lot of people saying yes, all right, which is very good. And, obviously, if you don't, that's okay. I certainly don't have anybody in my family that has, but because of my job, have met a lot of people who have received it.
A lot of members of our board are Purple Heart recipients.
And I'm glad to see a lot of you have seen it. And it's if you do know somebody who has it and they are willing to talk about it, it's good to ask them and learn from their experience. Now, if they don't want to talk about it, that's okay. But it never hurts to introduce a conversation about their service and, why exactly they did receive the Purple Heart. So you can learn from somebody who was, actually went through that experience. Okay, so with that, we're going to shift gears here and we're going to start talking about some of the stories from our collection. And we're going to go in chronological order here, starting with World War I. And our first example is Private John Streicher. And this is what we're looking at here is a close-up of his wound certificate, which Michael did mention earlier. So I'll let Michael tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, now remember, there was no medal associated with this, and this was a certificate. It's a beautiful, beautifully executed engraving, and they're hand lettered on the bottom with the soldier's name. And beneath that was pre-printed on it, served in honor in the World War and was wounded in action. And these were shipped to families and framed or put away. Some people didn't want to live with it on the wall. But this is what a World War I soldier would have received in 1919, 1920, 1921, 22, if they had been wounded in combat. In this particular one, we'll see some more of this. The soldier's things belonged, as Tim said, to John Streicher.
Yeah. So if we go to the next image here, we'll see his uniform with the Purple Heart on there and some of his other medals. And I'll let Michael talk about that. And I will just quickly point out that we've used the word a couple of times. We're seeing a chevron now. That's on the right there is the wound chevron we talked about earlier as a way to justify receiving the medal after the war was over. But tell us a little bit about what we're seeing with those medals there.
Sure. This is Streicher's uniform jacket, and it's embellished with medals that he would have received when he came home, particularly the Purple Heart. You see the Purple Heart on the left. And again, remember, those weren't given out till 1932. So Streicher would have received his at some point after that. But I want you to look at the leaves that are on the ribbon of the medal. Each one of those leaves is called a cluster, an oak leaf cluster. And each cluster designates another award of the medal. So if we count them, there are 2 clusters, that's 2 wounds, and the medal itself is a wound. So Streicher received 3 wounds in World War I, and those are displayed on his medal. Now, the image on the right, as Tim said, are the chevrons. They're very small, upside down. They're about 1.5 inches wide. They're made out of a wire bullion. But each one of those, and this is what he would have worn coming home from France before the medals were issued, each one of those represented his wounds. So you see the 3 wounds are represented there. And again, on the left, he has a victory medal that was issued when they came home. Each bar shows a different campaign or battle that he was in. The medal with a big star is a medal for the 2nd Infantry Division, which he was a member. And the cord going around his arm is a fourragère. It was a recognition by France that was given to particular infantry divisions that fought gallantly there. And the 2nd Infantry Division they were all awarded those fourragères.
And it's interesting, you can just see the patch up on his shoulder there. I just realized that
Yeah.
is also the same thing that's represented on the medal.
Yeah, it's the
as well.
second division,
The
the
second
Indian
division.
Head Division,
Yeah.
that was called.
Right. Okay, so that will wrap up John Streicher. We're going to move on now to World War II. And our example here is Staff Sergeant Robert G. Davis. And what we see here on the back of the medal, this is the first time we've seen the back of the medal, and you can see where for military merit, so they're still using the merit there, and then his name is engraved on there. Okay, so hand engraved on there on the back. I'll let Michael take over here and tell us a little bit about Davis's story. He was a part of something, a very important event in World War II.
Yeah, he was. Davis was a member of the Second Ranger Battalion, which is a very famous battalion in World War II. If you saw the movie Saving Private Ryan, those soldiers portrayed in that movie were the Second Ranger Battalion. But more importantly, Davis is a member who is present at the Normandy landings, and his Ranger Battalion stormed the beaches at Pointe du Hoc. And this was a very important mission. The Rangers were specially trained, highly trained, hand-selected, and they were to take this point by climbing 100 feet or more up the steep face of the point and take out a few German cannons that were up there that were essential to knocking out the defenses the Germans had that were threatening to the invasion. So Davis is a part of that invasion. He lands in the wave of soldiers on the beach. He makes his way to, he was a radio man, he carried a radio. He made his way to relative safety out of fire. He looked back at the beach and saw his lieutenant had been hit. But he also was trying to get his radio working, and it was just too sheltered there. So he moved out to the lieutenant and tried to see if he could administer some first aid to him. And the lieutenant told him to leave him alone and get the radio working. So Davis made a conscious choice. The only way he could get the proper radio signal was to do it in the open on the beach. And that choice cost him his life. He was killed there on the beach. So this medal is a very valuable national treasure being awarded to a ranger who was killed at Pointe du Hoc. And I want to show you, it's right here. We have it right here. These were sent home to the family. Well, first, before that was sent home, should I do that now?
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, if we go to the if we can go to the next slide real quick, and then we'll come back and do a quick little show and tell here. But just to continue with Davis's story here.
So it was the way people communicated, the way messages were communicated from the theater of war home was by telegram. And this is a telegram from Western Union, and they were delivered by a service representative, formally dressed to the house personally. And a lot of times it drew the attention of all the neighbors when they saw the Army car.
Yeah, nobody wanted to see that car.
That's a car you did not want to see. And it was very emotional for this telegram to be delivered. And it is from the Secretary of War, and he's expressing his deep regret that your son, Staff Sergeant Robert G. Davis, was killed in action on 6 June in France, letter to follow. So there was a letter that would have followed this, but this is the actual telegram announcing to the family that Davis had been killed. And that was sent on June 24th. So it took a few weeks for the paperwork to be gathered and sent home. On the left is the Purple Heart certificate that accompanied the medal. And we'll look at the medal in a second, but every Purple Heart recipient received this certificate, and it was signed by some pretty important people, but it gave the date of the incident, and it could be either wounded or killed. This one says killed. So this is, can we go to the medal?
Let's go ahead and
so
look at
this is the medal. The medal was delivered to the family. It came in a box, and these are often, they were nicknamed coffin boxes because when it came to the family, it looked like a little miniature casket, and it would, of course, symbolize the death of their loved one. And inside, it's a very beautiful presentation, as you can see. There's a plush pad, velvet pad, the medal, and this is a small enamel pin that could be worn by a civilian on a civilian jacket, showing that it's a Purple Heart. And of course, on the back, Usually you find in World War II, it's only men who had been killed received an engraved Purple Heart. So this is Davis's actual Purple Heart that his family received, and he grew up 2 blocks from here. He grew up 2 blocks from here. So we have a special tie to Sergeant Davis and his contribution. So let's move to the next slide.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and now we'll move into also in World War II was Corporal Martin C. Myers, and Michael's going to tell us a little bit about his story. He was a Marine, correct?
Right.
U.S. Marine Corps.
Right. So Myers, being a Marine, the Marines are under the Department of the Navy. They're a branch of service under the Department of the Navy.
Don't tell them that, but,
but
technically they are.
Formally,
Yes.
and you notice he had a star on his medal, a gold star. So the Navy, or the Department of the Navy, rather than having clusters, used a star to denote a second wounding. So we know that Myers was wounded twice, struck twice at least. The first time was on Saipan. The Marines are fighting in the islands. Some very difficult fighting in the Pacific Islands. So he's wounded on Saipan, and he was killed by a sniper on Iwo Jima, another very critical American battle, very well known, as you might recall, the flag raising statue or photographs that come out of that. So Myers was killed there, and that's his Purple Heart with a star on it, and it's in our collection.
So then we can move on to the Korean War. And in the Korean War, the example that we have is Corporal Kenneth Tuttle. And this is actually this image is directly from one of our exhibits here. And I'll let Michael tell us about Corporal Tuttle.
Yeah, Tuttle had served in the U.S. Navy in World War II, came home, found himself, a job. But when the Korean War started, he found himself wanting to keep serving his country, to offer himself to be a member of the armed forces to go to Korea. Tuttle went to Korea. He was reported missing. He was never found. His body was never found. But his family, at one point, after so long, and this is pretty typical with POWs or MIAs, sometimes they'll be declared dead by the service. So when he was declared dead, his family received the medals, one being a Purple Heart because he had passed away, and the others are that's a Korean War service medal from the UN, and then his combat infantry badge. So his mother tried everything she could do to find where he was before he was declared dead, writing through the Red Cross, looking for prison camps in North Korea, staging blood drives. She kept her son's name out in the front, but unfortunately, not only in her lifetime, but up to the present day, his remains have not been found.
And I think we've talked about this in a class before, but there are always efforts, though, continuous efforts to try to find these remains and locate these remains. And every once in a while, you'll see a story about some that have been recovered, and they are gone but not forgotten.
Right.
That's a big thing that is a part of what we do here at Soldiers and Sailors, and what the Army is still doing by looking for these remains.
Right.
So if we can move on to the Vietnam War, and this is Lance Corporal William R. Prom.
Prom was a Marine. He served in Vietnam in 1969 and 70. He was killed in action. These are his medals. So on the left, you see his Purple Heart, his American Defense Medal, his Republic of Vietnam medal with a star. The fourth medal is a medal that was awarded by the Republic of Vietnam. It's called a Cross of Gallantry, and the Republic of South Vietnam awarded those to American soldiers who were killed or wounded. So it has a leaf on it for his honoring his death. The next is a South Vietnamese campaign medal, and then there's another South Vietnamese medal. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but issued by the government of South Vietnam. So Prom was killed in 1970, and not only was he a Purple Heart winner, but he's very close to Soldiers and Sailors here because he was a recipient of the Medal of Honor. And we actually have his Medal of Honor. It's behind Tim and I. If we could get a picture there.
So it's right behind
It's
Mike
right
here,
there.
right over here.
Duck there.
Yep. One of the 7 that we have in our collection. We're very honored to have these, and we try to tell the stories every time that we can. The family has been here multiple times, and it's been such a great honor to work with them so closely, and we're very thankful that they donated it to us, including those other medals that we have
and his uniform, and we have a number of pieces that were his, and they'll be preserved here for many generations.
Right. And that brings us to our last example here, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and this is Specialist James Stuck, and this is a great image of him getting the medal pinned on. But what can you tell us about Specialist Stuck?
Stuck was an Army soldier who lost his leg in an explosion, an IED explosion, and he was medevaced out. He was operated on. He was fitted with a prosthetic leg, and this photograph was actually taken in the hospital of one of his buddies. I don't know if it's a buddy from his unit or another recipient, pinning a Purple Heart on Specialist Stuck. And remarkable, he was here, and we have his story here, and he was skiing in a month or 2 after his injury. Right. So he had a quick recovery.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to how far we've come in being able to take care of our wounded soldiers. I mean, somebody in World War I, or if you go back to the Civil War, you lost a limb, and your life was never going to be normal again. But here's an example of a young man that lost a limb, received his Purple Heart, and was skiing and very active and able to participate in pretty much anything in regular life. And a lot of that technology and that things we've learned is directly a result of the military and the work that they've done trying to care for wounded soldiers. So it's kind of a positive spin on the Purple Heart and its effect that it's had. So that was some of the stories that we have, and that's just a scratching the surface.
That's just scratching
of how many
it was
stories.
hard to pick. We have so many good stories,
right? But we wanted to share those with us. Some of those things are on display, some of those things are not on display, but that is going to bring us now to our game of fact or fiction. And we're going to go through this, read each one here, and I'll ask if that's true or fiction, fact or fiction. And some of these things we've talked about, some of them we haven't. So there might be a couple of real curveballs in here to see how you do. And I'll be quite honest, this isn't going to be easy. Right. If you don't get all of these, don't be disappointed. It was kind of set up to be kind of challenging. But we will start with this one in the beginning here, and it's the Badge of Military Merit was established by George Washington and only awarded during the American Revolution. So what do you guys think? Is that fact or fiction? Go ahead and type that in there, and I'll see, I'll check your answers as they come through here.
If you were listening.
Yeah, this one, I'd hope if you were listening, especially at the beginning of the program, should be pretty clear. And I'm seeing a lot of correct answers here. This is indeed fact. This is the origins of the medal right from the beginning, as we said, established by George Washington. That's why his image appears on the modern medal that we know today. And that can be attributed to that. So very good job, guys. Everybody was pretty much getting that one right with the fact. So let's move on to the next one. And the next one is fact or fiction. The Purple Heart is the oldest military award still given to U.S. military members. What do you guys think? I don't want to call this a trick question, but you have to kind of use some inferring here. And we did mention this earlier, and I'm seeing a lot of people getting this right, a few that are getting it wrong. And if you get this one wrong, I wouldn't even fault you very much, because, it is kind of a complicated history. But the correct answer here is fact. It is true. It is the oldest military award because we trace the Purple Heart back to the Badge of Merit. Right. With that direct lineage, that is what allows this to be considered the oldest award, given out by the United States military. So that one is indeed fact. All right, we'll go on to the next one here. And fact or fiction, more than 300,000 Purple Hearts were awarded during World War I. What do you think about that? I'm seeing a lot of great answers right away coming through. There's one word there that's the key. There's one tricky one there.
Read your question.
Yeah. And I've seen most people getting this right. And we did talk about this, that the fact that the medal was not around during the war right? So it came after the war. So yes, there were over 300,000 recipients of the Purple Heart that served in World War I, but they were not awarded actually during the war. They were retroactive afterwards because the medal had not been established until after the war, after, we talked about with Macarthur and the design of the medal and everything. So that one is actually fiction. If you get very down to it, and it all boils down to awarded during the war, that was not possible because the medal did not exist yet.
Remember, it was a chevron and not the medal.
Right. All right. So fact or fiction for our next one here. The Purple Heart is awarded to all soldiers who are wounded or killed while serving in the military. What do you guys think about that one? Fact or fiction? To all soldiers who are wounded or killed. Another one that's kind of getting down to the nitty gritty here, but I think we were pretty clear on this one. And I'm glad to see once again a lot of correct answers coming through here. So a lot of you guys were listening. Good job. Because the truth is this is fiction. This is not true because it's missing that one major caveat that I think we stressed pretty much is it has to be an action against the enemy. So you could be wounded. You could even die in a tragic Jeep accident or something like that. In training or something. There's examples of that would not be eligible for the Purple Heart. So this one is fiction because it is not involving engagement with the enemy. All right, our next one, fact or fiction. The Purple Heart falls directly below the Bronze Medal and above the Defense Meritorious Service Medal in order of precedence. Fact or fiction. So we didn't really mention this. This one is completely blind for the audience here. It's interesting to see what you would say, but just to give a little what we're talking about here, the medals are in order of precedence, with the Medal of Honor being at the top, and then there's the Distinguished Cross and the Silver Star. I might be generalizing here, but then there's the Bronze Stars underneath that. And then the question is, where does the Purple Heart fit in? Right. And according to this, does it fit in right after that Bronze Star or Bronze Medal and above the Meritorious Service Medal? And the fact is, it is true. That is fact. That one is a fact. If you said that, you were correct. That one was a really toughie. I saw both answers coming through because we did not directly answer that during the class, but that one is fact there. And we get a chance just to talk about the levels of importance. And that is something that I try to explain to people when they bring up the Purple Heart, because I think a lot of people immediately think it is the highest and the most, the highest medal that is awarded.
It gets a lot of attention.
It gets a lot of attention. It is a very serious medal. It's not to be, not taken lightly, but technically it falls in an order of precedence under other medals. It is not at the top of the line there. All right, so let's move on to the next one here. Is if you receive more than one Purple Heart while serving in the U.S. Army, you will receive a star representing the second medal, which is placed on the ribbon issued for the first medal. So you got to really read this one. Another one, you have to really pay attention to see what this is coming through here, is if this is going to be fact or fiction. And I'm seeing a lot of people get this right, which is great, making me happy to see a lot of good listeners out there. And you guys are getting this right. This one is fiction. Right. Because
where is it?
Right.
It's a star in Army.
And star in Army. Yep, you're exactly right. Putting those two elements together makes this one fiction, because as we mentioned, if you were in the Army, the second medal is represented by an oak leaf cluster, which we saw with Streicher in World War I. It is the Navy and the Marine Corps that use the star designation, which we saw with Myers in World War II. So just a little subtleties there, but to those who receive the medal, it is very important and very significant. And I think a lot of times, especially when it comes to these medals, it's those little details that when you know those things, it goes a long way and really means a lot to the individuals that have received it. All right, our next one. Prisoners of war have always been eligible to receive a Purple Heart. We did mention this one here. We talked about how some of the criteria in different groups, it has changed through the years on who's eligible and who isn't. And we're asking if this one has always, if the Purple Heart has always been for the prisoners of war.
So it would be World War I and World War II.
All right. And
Korea, Vietnam.
I'm seeing a lot of them come through here correctly. And that is fiction, because we did mention that did not happen until 1974, where prisoners of war were eligible to receive the Purple Heart. So good job, guys. You guys are doing really well here. I'm seeing
Yeah.
a lot of the correct answers coming through here as
Yeah.
we're following along. We're now to the next one here. Fact or fiction, there are more than 2 million total Purple Heart recipients. Is that a fact or a fiction?
It's a lot.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Is it a fact or
Yeah,
fiction?
exactly. That sounds kind of like a big number. And we did not talk about this one. So this is another toughie that, you might almost be guessing at. Unless you know this, which more power to you, good credit. But the truth is, this one is fact. All right. Now, these are, I have to be honest, these is estimating. It is hard to get an exact count on every single Purple Heart recipient, but most sources are agreeing that we are over 2 million total Purple Heart recipients, which is amazing to think about. It shows how much sacrifice our military soldiers have made through the years for our country. And it also speaks to, why so many people know it, I think, and why it is so familiar, because there are quite a few people out there. And that's why we asked earlier if you knew somebody, and I wasn't surprised to see that a lot of people had. So good job, guys, on that one. The next one here, there were 58 Purple Hearts awarded for those who died as a result of the attack on the Pentagon on September 11th, 2001. Fact or fiction?
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
We did not. Nope. So
So
another
it's a good one
toughie,
to think about.
And even more so because coming up here is going to be the 20th anniversary of September 11th. The attacks on September 11th. And of course, you think about the towers in New York City. Here in Pittsburgh, we think about the plane that went down in Shanksville, just outside of the city. But then there was also the Pentagon attack. And the answer to this one is fact. Yeah, that is true. 58 Purple Hearts were awarded to those who died as a result of that plane crashing into the Pentagon on September 11th, 2001.
They were military personnel.
Yeah, military personnel that were working at the Pentagon.
There were more killed there, but those were strictly military.
Right. So fact or fiction to the next one is the most Purple Hearts awarded to one individual is 8. That's a lot. I don't think you could fit that many oak leaf clusters on one medal. Seems awfully high to me, but who am I to say? We'll have to wait for the answer to come here in a minute as I see them coming through here. And indeed, this one is fiction. This is not true.
But which way does it go?
Yeah. The amazing part is the most Purple Hearts awarded to one individual is 10. Wow. And there are just a couple examples of individuals that have received 10 Purple Hearts. Wow. And that is some heavy service. That is getting wounded, going back into service over and over again, dedication to the military. I would venture to guess these individuals at one time had a chance to go home and get out of the military and continue to serve obviously in heavy combat against the enemy in order to receive 10 Purple Hearts.
Now that brings up an interesting point, if I can. You're in a battle and you receive several wounds at one time. That doesn't mean you get several Purple Hearts. Right. It's for each incident. So that would be one Purple Heart. Yeah. So these people could have been wounded multiple places.
Right. Well, right. But it's 10 specific circumstances or instances that they're awarded. That's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, our next one here, I think we just have a couple more. The Purple Heart differs from the most other decorations in that an individual is not recommended for the decoration. Rather, he or she is entitled to it upon meeting specific criteria. Is that fact or fiction? And where this is coming from, I think, is, a lot of times, when you think about medals, you have to be almost like nominated. Somebody has to say they witnessed it, especially when it comes to the Medal of Honor. It's very, specific,
not lightly given.
Right. Witnesses, accounts, things like that.
But vetted and investigated.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of times medals get upgraded with further investigation, but the Purple Heart is pretty much cut and dry. And this one is fact, because you don't need to be recommended for this. Nobody needs to go to bat for you. You don't need an eyewitness. If you're wounded and you fall into that criteria, wounded against the enemy, you are entitled to your Purple Heart. So that makes the Purple Heart very unique and different from all other military decorations. Right. And then we have one more. And this one's kind of interesting. We thought we'd end on a bit of a lighter note. There have been instances when animals holding military rank have been honored with the award, have received a Purple Heart. What do you think? Do you think that is fact or fiction? Where animals have received the Purple Heart? All right, I'm seeing a lot of interesting answers to this one.
All over the place
Yeah,
there.
this is a tough one.
Yeah.
And really, it's actually a pretty complicated
Yeah,
history, as we learned. I wanted to get a little bit more into this, but it's really hard to pin down the facts about this. However, I can say it is a fact that animals have received the Purple Heart. Where it gets a little tricky is some of those have been rescinded in later years through people who didn't think that animals should receive it, whatever it may be.
Right.
But I will point out there's one famous example of that, and it was Sergeant Reckless, who was a United States Marine Corps horse in the Korean War that received the Purple Heart. And we could not find anywhere where his was rescinded. So I believe his is still active. One of the ones we saw rescinded was a dog, I believe, in World War II or something like that. But this horse actually held a rank. He was a sergeant, it was.
You got a commission, non-commissioned.
Right.
Officers.
So he had to have a rank, and he's because he was wounded and had a pretty lengthy meritorious service. He did receive the Purple Heart. So that's one for some of you folks that are out there interested in animals in the military.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you can probably dive in there and do some research for. We kind of hit a brick wall after that, but I'm sure the answers are out there. We just had a whole class to develop. So for those of you out there that maybe want to continue your learning on after this, that's an interesting topic to look into. Okay, great job, guys. I mean, I am so impressed with how good you listened, and even getting some of those right that we didn't even talk about is very, very impressive. We're now looking at where we are now, Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum. That is the outside of our building here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on a nice clear day, which is not today. It is very rainy. But that is our beautiful building that was built in 1910 as a memorial to Civil War veterans from this area. About 25,000 men from this area served in the Civil War, and this was built for that, and has since become a memorial and a museum that honors veterans from all wars, Civil War through present day. And we have exhibits that have artifacts that have been donated through the years, including some of the medals we talked about today and some of the things we saw in the images today. Really, that's what we're all about, is telling these stories, making sure these individuals are remembered and honored and to their service to our country. And it's an honor to work here and to share these stories. And we're so glad that you're willing to listen and learn about these individuals. And like we said, hopefully go on to want to learn more on your own. So and that's going to bring us to the end for now, Brian. I'll throw it back to you.
Hey, thank you guys for telling those stories and making sure, you mentioned with, a few of the medals there that, that they get to live on for generations and generations, and those stories continue to be told. Staggering when you mentioned the over 2 million, Purple Hearts awarded, just sort of that amount of sacrifice deserves that kind of attention. And so huge thanks to you guys for making sure those stories continue to get told, and that sacrifice, continues to be remembered. For all of you out there, we've got a couple things coming up. You guys have been asking some great questions. We're going to get you some answers. We also mentioned a bit ago, we're going to give you a chance to lean into the screen and get a picture with the Purple Heart right now to be able to kind of commemorate your attendance in class and everything here. If you upload that to Instagram and tag Varsity Tutors and Soldiers and Sailors, you'll be entered to win a Soldiers and Sailors swag bag plus 1 free month of BT Plus, where you can learn about anything you want to learn from. There'll be a link on your screen here. Shortly, we can learn a little bit more about that. If you don't win and want to enroll, or you can't wait to see if you win, there's opportunities to learn more about that. But with that said here, let me get us a Purple Heart here on the screen. We'll turn our cameras off. So give you guys about 10 seconds to get those photos. Hopefully you got your cameras ready. And in the meantime, if you want to ask some questions, we'll get those answered here in just a second as well. All right, so hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to get those pictures again. We'll have the official handles up here on a slide. on the way out. But for now, I wanted to ask, you guys have been asking some really amazing questions, and I want to at least get as many of those as we can answered in the next few minutes. So for you guys, Tim and Mike, we have one of the ones that I definitely have this question as well is, we know what is the Purple Heart. We also know that there's a time-honored tradition in the military of military slang, which someday we should do a class on, because there's some great military terminology that's really fun to learn about. Does the Purple Heart have a more official name, or is it officially known as the Purple Heart?
Just the Purple Heart.
Yep, that's the name.
You'll see it abbreviated in official correspondence as the PHM, Purple Heart Medal, but nobody refers to it as that. It's just Purple Heart.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Hey, some others there. Do we know much about who was the first person? I think we have to go back to, after World War I, there were plenty of official Purple Hearts, posthumously or belatedly awarded. If we go all the way back to the Medal of Merit, do we know who the first person to win kind of the lineage of, or sorry, not win is the wrong terminology, to be awarded a Purple Heart in this long lineage? Do we know much about the first few that were awarded?
Yeah, there were 3 soldiers in the Continental Army. Their names are known. There's paperwork on them. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me, but yes, they are known.
Right, and they were directly awarded by Washington himself.
And it was supposed to be sewn on the sleeve. The patch was supposed to be worn on the sleeve. I might add, when you said first, when Macarthur designed the medal and had it put in circulation for military merit, they were numbered. Those medals were numbered on the edge. And guess who got number 1? Douglas Macarthur. he made sure he got military merit medal number 1. Yeah. And it was not for a wound. It was he was just that kind of guy.
Yeah. If you've read or learned about Macarthur, it fits the mold for sure.
That's fascinating. Fascinating history there. That's a pretty incredible fact there. So thank you guys. Hey, one other, we talked about sort of the hierarchy of medals. You definitely mentioned the Medal of Honor and Medals of Honor behind you. Do you mind telling us, while we're talking about, I know we did a class on it previously for those who weren't with us. Can you tell us a little bit about the Medal of Honor, its criteria, just because we've been looking at them over your shoulder for a little bit. What can you tell us, maybe, I hate to say comparison because that's probably the wrong, they're all, for valiant service and sacrifice, but what can you tell us quickly about the Medal of Honor that we see behind you?
Well, I think, when we're talking Medal of Honor, we're talking, the simplest language is above and beyond the call of duty. But even that, it's more selective. I mean, these are situations where individuals certainly put their life on the line or sacrifice their own life to save somebody else. These are situations that, once again, as we talked about, have to be witnessed by multiple people and vetted through, it's not
committees.
Yeah, it's not taken lightly. It is an engagement against the enemy. Obviously, that is a part of it, just like that is where it is similar to the Purple Heart. But I think, I'm sure there are a couple examples where guys got the Medal of Honor, but they weren't even wounded.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah. So there's a difference right there. I mean, if you did something, amazing and somehow came through unscathed, you could still get the Medal of Honor.
Like Douglas Macarthur.
Right. Yeah.
You got one, right. You got one of those too.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I think, that's the biggest thing is, it's a much more select group. Obviously there's and that is something where they have an exact number, and we're pretty certain of all the individuals that have received the Medal of Honor. And it is just a sacred piece, and as Michael said, a national treasure to be able to learn from these and study them.
So it had its origins in the Civil War. Those were when the first Congress enacted a medal for heroism in 1863, and those medals were not. There really was no definition. It was given to people who captured flags or got written up. But through the years, as Tim said, the words above and beyond the call of duty and gallantry above and beyond, those started to be the bar that the medal was earned by. And a lot of times it does mean that the individual sacrificed his life.
Right.
Great. Thank you. And for people who want to know a little bit more about the Medal of Honor, if you go to the Varsity Tutors YouTube channel and scroll back a few months in there, we did have a whole class on that, probably back, sometime around last fall, right? So
in November, it was around, it was called What is a Veteran? It was about Veterans Day and the meaning behind that. But then we also talked about the
that's right. It was a whole class section. So, and there's more to come. The other one, if you want to know a little bit more about military history, about, particularly as it pertains to sacrifices and accomplishments of soldiers, visit Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum, which I guess leads me to my last question for you guys. How can folks come and visit you? What can they expect to see when they're there? What's upcoming new at the museum? Tell us a little bit about what you guys have going on for, thank you for sharing, periodically, it's, kind of every 6 to 8 weeks or so, you guys do these classes. So we learn a lot for you, but I know there's so much more there. What can you tell us about how people can visit and what they can expect to learn?
Yeah, well, first thing you want to do is visit our website, soldiersandsailorshall.org, to learn all about us, keep up on all our events and programming that we have happening. Especially if you're not in the Pittsburgh area, you can still, see some great photos of the museum and get a general idea of what we're all about. But if you happen to be passing through the Pittsburgh area, we'd love to see you come visit the museum. We're open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 4. All veterans are free. There is an admission for people who are not in the service or not currently serving. And, you're going to see, an amazing collection of artifacts from the Civil War all the way up through present day, and see these stories of these individuals of service. We're also very excited to be just starting a program of redoing our exhibits. And when I say redoing, I mean pretty much modernizing them and bringing them to the 21st century. So we have our first exhibit was just taken apart in order to be measured and got it. And it was really interesting because we got to see kind of behind the scenes of what, are in those exhibits. And in the building itself, because that's our biggest artifact is our building. Even if you don't like military history, people come just to see our building and the architecture. And another fun fact is the movie Silence of the Lambs was filmed in our building. If you're familiar with that movie, there were some very famous scenes filmed there. So we have people come just to see that. Mm-hmm. So it is a landmark here in the city of Pittsburgh, beautiful building. And then you have this wonderful collection of military history as well. Am I forgetting anything?
No, it would take you anywhere from an hour to 4 or 5 hours to see.
Right. Depending on your interest. Yeah. So, and like I said, always helps to check our website because, with the current situation in the world and events that are happening here, sometimes our hours may need to be adjusted. So we always ask you to check the website first before coming to see us.
Sounds good. Well, hopefully lots of folks out here have the opportunity to make a trip out there. For those who can't, thank you guys for always bringing, such engaging, games, quizzes, challenges, and those kind of things to these classes for so much knowledge. I know a lot of research goes into it. So huge thanks to Mike and Tim for all of your insight and the artifacts and all the research and everything went into it. Thanks to all of you out there for all of your participation, and particularly a huge thanks to all the Purple Heart recipients out there. We all owe you a huge debt of gratitude. So thanks to all of you for participating. Thanks to Soldiers and Sailors. We hope to see you guys back here soon. And then, as promised, here are the credentials to tag or tags to hit if you want to get your photo up on Instagram for the chance to win the Soldiers and Sailors swag bag and that subscription to VT Plus. So with that, we'll say huge thanks to everyone, and we'll see everybody back here soon.